So I really appreciate you inviting me to talk to you. I've been in the election business for 24 years, and this is certainly my favorite topic to talk about. And this year, I have to say, in my 24-year career, has certainly been the most interesting and challenging. You know, the auditor, most people think of me as I conduct elections, and of course that's my background, but we also oversee all of the licensing, um, operations for vehicles and vessels, subagents that are located across the county, document recording. So anytime you buy your house, we're the keeper of historical documents. And I'm also the chief financial officer for the county, which I'm finding myself very busy in that right now because we have so much grant money through the CARES grants that we have to make sure that's spent correctly. And I'm proud to say that, you know, since I've been auditor, we've had 5 clean audits in a row. Which we had a history of audit findings previously. So pretty proud of that, and my staff has done an amazing job. So 2020 has certainly been a challenging year. We've been having to deal with a lot of cybersecurity issues. We've worked really hard to ready ourselves because the threats are real. We've worked hard to ensure our physical security at our ballot processing center and also our voting center. Plus, we've had to react to COVID, which has been a real challenge because while voter registration and things like that, and it may seem seamless to you, you get your ballot in the mail, you mail it in, we have people that have to process those ballots once we receive them. So we've had to take extraordinary measures to make sure that I can keep my staff and all of our ballot processing staff safe. So, you know, really, we started hearing about the cybersecurity threats even before the 2016 election, but not with the exclamation points that we've seen recently. And in 2017, elections was declared part of the nation's critical infrastructure by the Department of Homeland Security. And what that means is we're only one of 17. And what that means is they view elections as important as our electrical grid, our nuclear power plants, our aerospace industry, our technology infrastructure. So that has really opened up a lot of resources for us as election administrators. We've worked really closely with the Department of Homeland Security since that time. And we are a target, there's no doubt about that. In fact, there is a malicious malware attack happening across the country as I speak. And, you know, fortunately, nobody in Washington or, you know, any counties that I'm aware of have been breached, but it's a very serious and sophisticated campaign that's happening right now. So I want to say kudos to all the election administrators, the Department of Homeland Security, and the military department who has worked really hard to ready us for this moment. And I can't say that, you know, our infrastructure is totally safe, but we have done just about everything we can think of to make sure that we're as safe as we can be. One of the things that we've done, we've had the Department of Homeland Security in a couple times, and they've actually tried to penetrate our county system. They've tried to come in through our ports, and it's been a orchestrated effort. And where they see weaknesses, they have certainly let us know, and we have tightened those up. When that started happening, one of the things that I realized is this isn't just an elections thing. We've got to involve the entire county because I'm only as strong as the weakest link, which may be in the sheriff's department from a Department of Corrections employee at 2 a.m. playing games on his computer, right? So we stood up a cybersecurity task force. We actually, I'm proud to say, won a national award for this from the National Association of Counties for the structure, because we had everybody involved, all elected officials, all department directors, representative from the county commissioner's office, assistant county manager, and we really took our cyber posture seriously. The other thing that we have implemented for anybody who is working remotely during COVID is they are required to use multi-factor authentication to get into our network. So basically it's something you have and something you know. So I have a password to get into my computer, but then I also get a text message on my phone to hit this duo, and I have to confirm that, yes, I am trying to access my computer. So this is a big help in preventing anybody from stealing credentials and getting into our systems, because it's the number one way that nefarious actors get into anybody's system. We've tightened administrative rights for all of our IT staff. It's on a need to know. If they don't have to have access to these administrative functions, they're not giving rights to that. We also segmented our election system from the rest of the county. So picture putting our election computer infrastructure inside a gate, a locked room. So even if the sheriff's office were to be compromised or public works were compromised, they would not be able to get through the walls that have segmented our election security system for voter registration and all of that. And our tabulation system and everything at the ballot processing center is air gapped, so nothing is connected to the internet. We also put in place an Albert sensor. What this does is it monitors all the IP activity that is hitting our system, and this is monitored 24/7 by the Department of Homeland Security. We also got a grant to get some pretty sophisticated phishing exercise software. So we send out phishing campaigns internally to county staff on a regular basis. And if they click on the link they shouldn't have clicked on, they automatically get put into training. They cannot function, they can't do any other operation on their computer until they get through this training. But also, when you report that as a phishing email, they also send you this big congratulations, so it makes you feel good too. So that has been very successful. You know, nationwide, the phishing statistics is about 15% click on the link. We're down to about 6.5% right now in the county. So I'm really proud of that and proud of our IT staff for really moving forward with this effort. We also are part of Department of Homeland Security endpoint detection and response. So on all of our election computers, they have put this application that if anything seems nefarious or suspicious, it automatically reports that. So we've done just about everything we can think of to keep our election infrastructure safe. So wish us luck. I don't know what more we could do. Well, the other thing we did, in addition to the Department of Homeland Security cybersecurity audit, I also contacted the state auditor's office because they also offer free assessments, and this is incredibly thorough, even a little more thorough than the Department of Homeland Security, because this was a 2-year-long process, and they finally finished this up just about 6 weeks ago. And I'm proud to say we took care of any of the low-hanging fruit, the things that they recommended. We've put those security measures in place. I've been very active with my Board of County Commissioners to ensure that they take cybersecurity seriously and fund the tools that we need. The other thing that we've done, I don't know if anybody's been to our ballot processing center, but our ballot processing center is actually in a different building than our voter registration at the courthouse, which will be moving, and I'll talk about that later. But we actually had the Department of Homeland Security come out, do a walkthrough. We talked through all of our systems, answered a ton of questions and a big long questionnaire, and really took all of the recommendations that they made for us very seriously. So for example, if you have a computer, you know you've got a USB port in there. Well, we have various computers for signature checking and a bank of computers that people use to reconcile challenge ballots. So what we did was put UBS blockers in all the ports where you could insert a USB drive. So they're very difficult to get out. You need a special tool. And not that I think that anybody could, because it's such an open atmosphere, but just in case anybody wanted to come by, walk by, stick a USB drive in some computer, there's no way they would be able to do that. We also put all of our servers and tabulation PCs in locked cabinets. So the only people that can get in there to turn them on or off or anything are full-time staff. And we put tamper evident seals on them to ensure that nobody has accessed them. So if anybody did access them, it would be readily apparent to us. We put in a new camera system, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment, to where we have cameras that film every single corner of our ballot processing center. And we keep that footage for the length of time we have to retain any normal election material. So for a special election, that would be 60 days. For a federal election, we would keep it for 22 months. And what we're in the process of right now, which was also a recommendation of the Department of Homeland Security, is putting in generators. We have two bays. We've got ballot processing and scanning happening on one side, and we've got the intake, which is putting our ballots on a mail sorter, and our signature checking that goes on the other bay. So we've got some big, huge generators that will be able to power our ballot processing center if we lose power. So this is a picture, gives you an idea of some of the security and we have in place. On the left, these are our ballot scanners that we use to actually count the ballots. So you can see when they're not in use, they're behind a nice fenced area that is locked and sealed. The picture in the middle is where we store ballots when they're not being processed. So when they come off of our ballot sorter, for example, and they're at sig check, everything goes in there and nothing is left out. Overnight, everything is locked up, so it's very secure. And the cameras that you see, we've actually upgraded these, but this gives you an idea. They're located throughout the facility. We've upgraded them to give us a lot better pixelation, and they're motion activated. So even at night, they will record if something triggers them to record. And we know that because we've had birds in our facility and moths set them off. So it does work. Now, one of the things that's been really interesting this year, I mean, 2020 has been interesting in way too many ways, but we had to conduct, the end of our presidential primary election, and of course, prepare for our primary and general election dealing with COVID-19. So one of the things that was readily apparent when we were all on lockdown and the courthouse wasn't open is there was no way we were going to be able to have our voting center in building 1 of the courthouse, either in the primary or the general election. If anybody's been to our courthouse, you know that it's a tiny building in building 1. My election office is smaller than, the lobby is smaller than most people's bathrooms. We can only fit 2 people in there with 6 feet distance. And in the 2016 election, even though we moved our voting center into a big meeting room called 152, we had lines out both entrances, both doors to building 1 from about 4 o'clock until we closed. And there was no way we would be able to social distance. So what we did, we started brainstorming. At first we were gonna put a work shack up in the parking lot and route cars behind the courthouse to do drive-through voter registration. Then I was having a conversation with our county assessor, who's a trustee at SPSCC, and suggested that I reach out to them. So that's what I did. I reached out to Timothy Stokes, president of South Puget Sound Community College, and they were generous enough to give us their student union hub, as well as 2 buildings that are in the circle where the bus loop is, to use as our voting center. So we're offering strictly drive-through voter registration and voter services this year. So voters don't even need to get out of their car. If they want to come and register, they can do that. If they're coming to get a replacement ballot, which is what's happening in the picture right here, we've since gotten we're using butterfly nets now to hand the ballots to the voters. So we actually have more distance between the worker and the car now than we do in this picture. But it's really important for us to keep both voters safe as well as our workers, because I have 8 full-time staff and I cannot afford for a single one of those folks to get sick. So we are working really hard to make sure that everybody stays healthy. So we are using the same facility for our ballot processing center. And this is a big warehouse out in the Mottman area, not too far from South Puget Sound Community College, actually about a block away. But you can see in the top picture, we had 9 people per table bank, right? Now what we've had to do, we've put a lot of plexiglass up to protect them from the person across from them, the person next to them. And we can only have 5 people per table bank as opposed to 9 like we did before. So, you know, we've had key staff separate. For example, I have not seen my chief deputy auditor in person since March 10th. My election supervisor and elections manager are in separate locations. The people that are cross-trained, we work hard to not have them working together. So if one person becomes ill, the other person can take over. But with 8 people, that's a real challenge when your staff in a presidential election swells to about 150. So this election has been a real challenge, but my staff is truly amazing and they're doing an excellent job. We have everybody wearing masks and gloves. We have hand washing stations set up. We don't allow people to share pens or anything else. Everybody has their own little, it's like a little carrying case, you know, that they have with their own pen, their own paper cutter, you know, or envelope cutter, their own plastic thumbs, their own sticky notes, so nobody is touching anybody else's material. And we worked with the county health officer to go through our plans well before the general election and ran through these scenarios and asked for any suggestions and feedback on how we could ensure that we keep all of our workers safe, because our workers at the ballot processing center are in that high-risk population. But I'm really pleased to say that everybody has come in and worked, and you know, they feel safe. We're taking everybody's temperature before they can come into the building, and that includes political observers. That includes me. I'm stationed out at the college where my chief deputy is at the ballot processing center, but even I have to have my temperature taken every single time I walk into that office. You know, there's been a lot of discussion on vote by mail recently in the news. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the myths. And you know, we've been doing vote by mail in Washington State for decades. And we're also being asked to be a resource for the rest of the country. I recently testified in a lawsuit in Montana regarding the deadline for ballots to be received. You know, should it be a postmark deadline or required to be in-house deadline? A colleague of mine in Mason County recently testified in a Pennsylvania case about why there should be more than 1 drop box per county. I'm sure you've recently heard that on the news. That's been in the news recently. But we're being asked by a lot of people across the country because we are subject matter experts. And, you know, while we're hearing a lot of things in the news, you know, it's not real and it's not true. You know, people talk about stealing signatures. You know, you can fake anybody's signatures. And our signature verification staff is trained by the State Patrol Fraud Division in signature verification, and they are required to go through that training every single year. And most of our signature verification staff have been with us for many, many years. So they're very good at checking signatures. And we don't just look at it and say, oh, that doesn't match. For us to reject a ballot, it's looked at about 6 or 7 times by, you know, the higher you go up, or the more checks there are, I guess it's more senior people that are looking at those signatures. A lot of people are saying that it favors one party over the other, and that is absolutely not true. In fact, when vote by mail was being discussed in Washington State back in the 2000s, it was actually the Republican Party that was pushing this really hard. Now, you know, you've got people at the national level saying that it's not safe, or that it favors one party over the other, and that is certainly not true. Anybody can request a ballot. Nobody asks what your political party affiliation is. You know, that ballots get lost in the mail. Yes, that's true. They do sometimes. So what we always do is tell people, if you don't receive your ballot by, say, October 20th, call us. We can always issue a replacement ballot. And we can issue as many replacement ballots as you want, but you can only return one. And I have to say, I was one of those people that did not receive my primary election ballot. So I know it happens. It was the first time since I've worked in elections in 24 years that I didn't get my ballot. But I had to go into the voting center and request a duplicate ballot. So what happened to it, I don't know. My husband got his, but you can always get a duplicate ballot. There's a lot of talk that, oh my gosh, the Russians are going to be printing all these ballots and flooding counties with these ballots. And there's no way that that could happen. We have 8,000 jurisdictions across the country that conduct elections. Almost 3,100 different counties, and then the other ones are smaller cities that conduct the elections. And programming is unique to every single jurisdiction. And notice when you get your ballot for this election, you'll see these marks on the side of your ballot. They look like little blocks. Those are what we call timing blocks. And basically, there's a lot of information in those. It tells us your precinct. It tells the machine, okay, this block and this mark is a vote for this candidate. So they're very sophisticated, and there's no way that some foreign entity would be able to print those ballots and send them to us that we would not notice. Plus, the envelope you receive and return to us has a barcode on it. And in that barcode, your voter ID is embedded in it, the precinct is embedded in it, your ballot type is embedded in it. And you sign that voter declaration. And we check every single declaration against the signature that we have on file for you. So that leads to another thing. Don't ever think that you can fake your spouse's signature. You know, we have parents sign their children's signatures quite often when they're away at college. And unfortunately, those ballots don't count because, you know, your signature may have changed. And if your signature changes, we contact you and give you an opportunity to update your signature. But if you sign for somebody else and that person gets the form from us and says, okay, please sign and verify, the signature is not going to match your signature on that ballot. So those are the number one reason, which is very painful for me because it's a lot of parents signing kids or college kids' ballots. I know how she was going to vote. She told me over the phone how she was going to vote. Sorry, doesn't work that way. We check every signature and we do reject them if they don't count. You know, there's a myth that, well, if you vote by mail, it's not a secret ballot. Well, it is. Even though we've moved to secrecy sleeves and there's some criticism to that, you know, you put your ballot in that secrecy sleeve, the process, and I'll show you that in a video at the end of this presentation, the identifying information on your envelope is separated from that secrecy envelope and the identifying envelopes are taken away. So all you're left with, the ballot inspectors, are a stack of secrecy sleeves with ballots in them, and then they process them. So they have no idea, no way of knowing whose ballot they're looking at when they're doing ballot inspection. You know, I've been doing this work for 24 years. While I was elected in 2013, I spent 17 years as the supervisor of elections in Pierce County, county to the north. And I have never seen a case of voter fraud. And vote by mail, in my opinion, should be the standard across the country. It's voter friendly. It's much more secure than polling places, even though that's not what people want to tell you. It saves a tremendous amount of taxpayer dollars because you're not having to open all of these voting centers or polling places across the county and hire the hundreds of workers and train the hundreds of workers that are required to conduct polling place elections. And I love this quote. This is from the Michigan Lieutenant Governor. The fact is, more people are killed by deer in a year than have ever been proven to commit voter fraud. And we're talking nationwide. So don't believe what you hear, don't believe what you read. It's not true. So how can you help? You know, we are getting bombarded with fake news right now. And I don't know if you're on our webpage, but I really would suggest that you like our webpage. We put a lot of information out there on how to spot fake news, and we're partnering with a lot of organizations where that is their sole function, is educating people on how to spot fake news. But I think the most important thing you can do is check the source, and don't click too quickly before you check the source. And there are also a lot of fact-checking sites out there that you can reference to see, okay, is this real or is it fake? Because the goal of these people that are spreading all of this fake news, which is Russia and China and whomever, I mean, they really want to undermine the confidence in our election system. Because what they say and what we hear is, if you can undermine the confidence in the system and people think that their vote isn't going to count, they're less likely to vote. And we need every single person to participate. So we have done a huge voter outreach campaign. I hope you got our mailer. We sent it to every household, you know, and the message was to everybody, to new voters, to people who've recently moved, to voters to please vote early because we only have half the staff to process them, and please use a drop box because that's really safe. We're mailing ballots earlier than any other county in the state. We're actually mailing them on October 8th, where normally we would mail them on the 14th. So you're going to get your ballot really early. However, keep in mind that that Monday after we mail is Columbus Day or Indigenous People Day. So the post office will be closed on that Monday. So if you know who you're going to vote for, go ahead, fill out your ballot, vote early, and please put it in a drop box. I think we've got them located really conveniently across the county. We've got 29 drop boxes, which is more per capita than any other county in the state. And we're expecting huge turnout. We expect 90% turnout this election. And that's a lot. We're at about we're going to hit 200,000 registered voters. So that means we're going to be looking at processing 180,000 ballots with half the workers we normally have to process the ballots, even though we're working 12 hours a day and weekends to get this through. And in the primary, we received 40,000 ballots on election day. So, and we had about, I don't know, 56 or, I mean, it was record turnout. But if we have 90% turnout, we could get hit with 90,000 ballots on election day, which is huge. So the other thing we're asking is be patient. Results may be slow. It's going to take us a long time to get through those, but you know, accuracy is more important than speed. And we have 21 days to certify this election. And I can tell you, we had 14 days to certify the primary election, and we used every single one of those 14 days to certify that election because it was record turnout and we had half the staff to process the ballots. So if you've never watched ballot processing, and I'm going to show you a little video in a second, it's pretty fascinating. You know, most people don't even think about what happens to my ballot once I put it in the drop box or drop it in the mail. So I'm going to show you the path of the ballot video in just a moment. But also, if you're really bored and want to watch something, we're actually live streaming our entire operation during this election. So you can go to our website, check on it, click on a link, and you'll get to see what's happening in the ballot processing center. So it's pretty interesting. You know, unfortunately, it's not the type of media where you can ask questions, but because it's just live streaming video. But it's a really fascinating process, and we can have observers, but we're limiting it to 1 to 2 people at a time. Where in the past, I had bus loads of kids up to 40 people at a time on a tour. So I'm actually really disappointed that we can't do that this election. So I'm going to show you a short video. It's not long, but this tells you what happens to the ballots once you put it in a Dropbox or in the mail.
Hi, my name's Mary Hall,
Eric?
Thurston County Auditor.
Yes.
I want to walk you through how ballots are kept secure, how we process ballots, and how we know your vote is tabulated. Every eligible voter is mailed a ballot 20 days prior to each election. Voters can vote their ballot, put their completed ballot in any mailbox, no postage is required, or any one of our 28 drop boxes located conveniently across the county. We have pickup teams that go out to each ballot drop box and bring them back to our facility for processing. We always ensure that when anyone is handling ballots, there are always 2 people present. And we also use tamper-evident seals and logs to ensure ballots have not been tampered with and ensure chain of custody. We verify the seals to make sure that the seal matches what's on the seal log, and then 2 staff members will open the bag and remove the ballots. Then we put them on our sorter, which takes a picture of the signature, reads the barcode, which contains your voter ID number, and sort the ballot down to the precinct level. Most people aren't aware, but we check every single signature on each ballot envelope against the signature that we have on file in our voter registration database. So after the sorter takes the picture of that signature, we match the signature that's on the ballot declaration to the signature that is in our voter registration system. If they match, the envelope is passed through. If the signature didn't match, we'll contact the voter by sending a letter, first-class mail. We also include a postage-paid return envelope for the voter to return their cure back to us. If the voter doesn't respond, we'll also call the voter to see if we can assist them in solving their signature discrepancy or ask why they didn't sign the voter declaration. If your signature changes, you're always welcome to stop in our office and update your signature because signatures do change over time. So once we've identified the voter's identity, the returned ballot packet is opened. 3 steps take place. The security envelope is removed from the envelope containing the voter information and signature. Those outer envelopes are taken away. This step is done in batches. At this point, the connection between the voter and their specific ballot has been severed. That's how we protect the secrecy of the vote. Next, the security envelope is opened and the ballot removed. After we opened the envelopes, we visually inspect the ballot to ensure that the tabulator is going to count your vote in the way that you intended them to count. If we find stray marks or food particles or something that will cause our tabulation equipment to not count it the way you intended, we'll resolve that ballot. Strict rules dictate how ballots are resolved, and we are guided by our voter intent manual, so ballots are resolved consistently across the state of Washington. Resolving requires a team of 2. After that team of 2 resolves all the ballots, another team of 2 audits the ballots to ensure that they were resolved correctly. The ballots are scanned and we tabulate and release results at 8 p.m. on election night. Because we're a vote-by-mail environment and ballots only need to be postmarked by election day, scanning continues through several days after the election, and new results are reported daily until all eligible votes are counted. Throughout the entire ballot process, ballots are stored in highly secured areas, accessible only to approved personnel. In our ballot processing facility, we also have cameras which record every part of our facility, and we keep those recordings for the length of the retention period for that specific election.
All right. So any questions? Hope you enjoyed that. It's actually a fascinating process, and there's more that goes into it than most people would ever imagine. So I'd be happy to answer it to questions at this time.
There are a few questions in the chat. Mary, would you like me to read them to you?
Let me get back to where I can see Zoom.
Alan asked, what are the mechanics of verifying signatures? what is the reference against which they are checked?
So when somebody registers to vote, there are one of two ways they do it. They either fill out a voter registration form, which they sign, or you can also register through the Department of Licensing. So if you register using a paper form, we actually scan that signature and that becomes part of your voter registration record. If you registered at the Department of Licensing, then we pull that signature from the Department of Licensing and that becomes a signature in your record. So when the ballot comes in and the sorter takes a picture of your signature, they actually come up two up. So you've got your voter reg signature here and the ballot declaration signature here. So they come up 4 voters at a time, and it's pretty evident. When signatures don't match, they actually really pop out at you. So it's the signature in our voter registration system and the signature on the ballot declaration.
Steve Heyer asked, how often are drop boxes cleaned out of ballots?
You know, it really depends on the election. In a special election where we don't have high volume, it might be every other day, every third day, even if it's, you know, weather's good. In a presidential election, this presidential election, they will be picked up every day. And as we get closer to the election, actually twice a day.
So Dan asked, part of the argument that mail voter favors one party over the other is an economic one. For any of several reasons, it is a burden for some people to go to a polling place and stand in line for indeterminate time to vote. The argument is that most of those people vote Democratic. Thus, mail voting favors Democrats. I know this does not apply to Washington since we are completely mail voting, but do you have any thoughts on that issue?
You know, I'm not in any of those other states, so I really can't speak with any authority. I mean, that's what I've heard too, but I think there is a huge push to get everybody to vote by mail, especially in light of COVID. And, you know, election administrators across the state, they really do want to enfranchise voters and not create voter suppression. It's really the lawmakers and other outside groups that force the laws that cause them to do that. So, you know, I really can't say I'm in this little safe, little awesome bubble in Washington state that has been voting by mail for years and has some of the most progressive laws in the country for voter inclusion. So I'm sorry, I'm sure I didn't answer your question, but I don't know.
One more question from Alan, and he asked, when do you start counting ballots? Is it as they are received?
Well, counting or scanning. So we can start scanning ballots as soon as they're received. And we always set a date, okay, let's gather them, because we count by precinct because it's just easier if you have a recount. So we like to get as many ballots in a precinct to put them through, you know, in a batch as possible. But I know that we had an elections meeting yesterday and we're going to start scanning earlier. We can scan as soon as we receive them, but our systems don't allow us to hit like total or results until 8 p.m. on election day. And that's a programming thing. So there's no way we could hit total, but we can scan them as soon as we receive them.
That's it for questions in the chat, but if anybody wants to unmute themselves.
I have a question.
Sure.
Actually, I have a couple. Sorry.
Great. I love questions.
Okay, good. So regarding the signatures still, what if over the years you happen to have signed your signature a couple different ways? So I'm Kathleen, but I always sign Kathy. And so is it how your name appears on your ballot that's mailed to you? Is that the exact way you should sign it? Or do you have a couple different signatures, you know, or would you just send it up to the supervisor if it's not exactly right?
It doesn't have to match the signature in your voter registration form. We have to be able to discern that the handwriting is the same. And I'm in that same situation because, you know, my legal name is Mary Johnson Hall. For a while, I was actually signing MJH. because not at the level I am now, actually, as auditor, but as election supervisor, you sign so many things, you get sick of signing. So I shortened it. And my signature always matched, because you can really see the similarities, and really they look for the differences, not the similarities. So, my sister's name is Barbara A. Johnson, and she signs B.A. Johnson. And it's very evident that the handwriting is the same.
Okay.
So law allows for that. So it doesn't have to be signed identically.
Okay, good. And I have a more complicated question. Okay, so this has to do with voter fraud, I guess, but I was notified by the VA that their system was broken into, and they were concerned that people had stolen deceased people's information, and that they might be using that because my stepdad had passed away, and so I think that's why. How do you verify that the person is actually alive and that they're qualified to vote, like that they're a citizen and all of that? How do you verify that type of thing to make sure that they're a legal voter?
So we do a lot of list maintenance in Washington State. So the Department of Health sends us deceased voter records all the time. So that's also with felony convictions and things like that. So we receive those files that are matched against our voter registration file that allows us to eliminate deceased voters. The only thing that would be different is if somebody died in Texas and they're registered in Washington, we may not receive that information. But again, the signature has to match. So even if somebody tried to steal that person's identity, they also have to be able to steal their exact signature, because we're still going to match it against the signature that we have on file.
Okay. And that's the same with citizenship, I take it, that they are a citizen.
Sorry, excuse me. I have an old blind dog. As far as citizenship goes, they swear an oath that they are a citizen of the United States, both when they, get their driver's license and all of that. And I can tell you, we do not have people, it's instant deportation if you were to vote and proven not to be a citizen. And more often than not, what we find is the Department of Licensing accidentally registered somebody to vote, and these people are panicked. So they come in and they get a certified letter from us that proves that, okay, they may have been registered, but they never voted, and then we cancel their registration. That happens a lot. And that's just because of the way we have things set up in Washington State with the Department of Licensing. But we have no evidence, no cases in Washington State of non-citizens voting, because that is instant deportation. The penalties are simply too high.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
If someone's house burned down or was destroyed, how did they get their mail? It's arranged through the post office somehow, I guess, but if it was...
I'm not a postal employee, but I know there are a lot of ways that you can redirect mail. You can have the post office hold your mail. I know we do that when we're out of town for any length of time. You can change your mailing address to a sister, brother, niece, cousin, wherever. You can also get general delivery at a post office. So you can address it to yourself, general delivery, and you have, I believe, Emmett, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 30 days to retrieve it, general delivery at the post office.
It is
so
30 days.
There are ways. Is it 30 days?
Okay. It is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully this hasn't happened in Washington, but I know in Oregon, there's a few towns that have been leveled, and there is no way for those people to get mail. So I know there's more than 30 days. They've got time to get it figured out, hopefully, but I'm just wondering what that process is. So.
Yeah, my heart goes out to them. My sister lost everything in the Paradise, California fire on November 8th, 2018. So yeah, that's tough. And I know that, election offices in those counties are doing as much as they can to work with those displaced people. That's not unlike we're experiencing right now with COVID, right? I mean, a lot of people, because they're finding themselves unemployed, are now couch surfing at their relatives' home, you know, because they lost their jobs and things like that. So, you know, we are reaching out to message as much as we can of how to receive your ballot in those situations. And fortunately, in Washington State, you can change your address and register to vote up to 8 o'clock on election night, which was a bill that was passed in 2018, which I'm really proud to say I championed and was the only elected official the governor asked to speak at the bill signing ceremony. So we have some really good laws that are very inclusive in Washington State.
Yeah, Mary, this is Steve Heyer. Last year I came up to I think it was last year, up to your place at Mottman and toured the counting and watched the process for a while.
Oh, good.
Really impressive. I think it was your assistant person who showed me around, but it was very impressive and I felt very secure. So thank you. I'm one of your 50-year voters, I think. So.
Awesome. That's awesome. You know, I'm saddened that we're not able to do that this year, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to do it next year, but that's an amazing ceremony to recognize all of our 50-year voters. So yeah, you know, when this COVID is over, the Ballot Processing Center is really a fascinating tour. And, you know, one thing that this election is proven to us, and we knew this kind of coming into this election pre-COVID, that we've kind of outgrown that facility. So we will be looking for a new home. And this next location, I'm going to have all my staff together. Right now I have 4 voter registration people and 4 ballot processing people in different locations. So we will be looking for a new home, hopefully to move in the latest of first quarter of 2022. So if you know of empty buildings, the best location for us is a standalone empty retail space like Toys R Us on Cooper Point, but Planet Fitness is going in there, which I was really disappointed to hear, but that's the exact type of location we need. If any of you are commercial retail folks out there.
The question is, have other states inquired about the success Washington has experienced in light of their concerns?
Oh, yes. We've been, you know, not only myself and other auditors, King County Auditor, Pierce County Auditor, myself, Secretary of State. We have talked to a lot of counties this year, offered advice. We've also been involved in a lot of lawsuits as subject matter expert witnesses, and which I expect to continue, you know, through this election and beyond after the election. So yeah, you know, it's actually, as you know, any association that you've been involved in professionally, it's actually a pretty small world. It's a pretty small network. I'm a nationally certified registrations, you know, elections and registrations administrator. And so I participate in groups on a national level. It's a pretty small group of election officials, and we're a pretty tight bunch. And we ask people for advice and questions all the time. So we're sharing best practices and everything we can with our colleagues across the country.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, Auditor, can you hear me?
I can.
Good. In the presentation, you mentioned something about, and I believe it was on your website, you know, sort of a link or whatever to have resources for sort of getting around fake news. I think that's what I heard.
Yes, actually, we share a lot of that on our Facebook page. So I would suggest liking our Facebook page, and then you can always go back and look at prior posts. But we work really hard to provide resources that allow people to educate themselves on how to spot fake news, what to look for, and they're through very, very reputable sources.
All right, thank you everyone so much, and certainly thank you to Auditor Hall and to Emmett. Behind the scenes work was phenomenal. So I hope to see you.
Thank you very much.
program.
Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoy these sort of presentations and Q&A sessions. So, you know, anytime you have questions or want to understand the landscape of elections, I'm always happy to come and talk to you and share, whether, you know, now it's Zoom, but hopefully not too far down the road, it can also be in person. So